There was once a time you could walk into any gun shop in America and see stripped AR lowers hanging from a pegboard behind the counter. 9 times out of 10, there was a little running horse stamped on the side. Unfortunately, that horse just rode off into the sunset forever. Anderson Manufacturing is no more. But this isn't your typical gun company postmortem. Anderson didn't go bankrupt. They didn't get caught up in some scandal or controversy. They didn't really fail at anything. They just cashed in their chips and walked away. I'm Sam S. from AT3 Tactical, and this is how a Kentucky machine shop became one of America's biggest AR parts suppliers. Then, randomly went out for cigarettes and never came home. It didn't start with firearms parts. In 1955, William Anderson opened a precision machine shop in Hebron, Kentucky. The exact founding date gets fuzzy. Some sources say 1955, others say 1965, but Anderson's own farewell message claimed nearly 70 years of operation. So I'm going with 1955. For the first 50-some years, Anderson was your typical American manufacturing story. Aerospace parts, automotive components, and precision metalwork for serious industries where tolerances are key. Nothing glamorous, just solid craftsmanship for steady clients. William's sons Carl and Charles eventually took over the family business, continuing the tradition, making parts for airplanes and cars, keeping the lights on, paying the bills, always moving forward. Then 2008 hit like a freight train. The recession didn't just tap the brakes on Anderson Manufacturing, it slammed them. Orders began to dry up, then disappear entirely. The Andersons found themselves sitting on expensive CNC equipment, a skilled workforce, and a whole lot of overhead with nobody buying what they could make. Desperate times call for desperate measures, right? In 2009, facing a recently devastated aerospace and automotive market, the Andersons made their first cautious step into firearms. They started making OEM parts for firearms manufacturers. Basically being a supplier, using their precision machining skills to make components that would wear someone else's brand. Then they went to SHOT Show to exhibit their OEM parts capabilities, make industry connections, and get a real sense of the firearms market. What they saw at SHOT changed everything. The firearms industry wasn't just growing, it was exploding. AR demand was through the roof, everyone needed parts, and there weren't enough suppliers to keep up. After SHOT Show, sitting back in that Kentucky facility, the decision practically made itself. Why are we making parts for other companies' brands when we could be building complete guns under our own name? By January 2010, Anderson Manufacturing was producing complete rifles. Not fancy, not innovative, just basic, affordable, mil-spec ARs that worked. Anderson wasn't trying to compete with Daniel Defense or BCM on quality. They were aiming at a different market entirely. People who wanted an AR but couldn't drop a paycheck on their first rifle. And here's the beautiful part. Their aerospace background meant they knew how to hold tolerances. A cheap Anderson lower wasn't some pot metal disaster. It was a properly machined 70-75 T6 aluminum that just didn't have a bunch of extra bells and whistles. Cookie cutter, but functional enough so newcomers from all over could buy in cheap and let their freak flag fly with accessories and upgrades later down the road. Somewhere in the early 2010s, people started calling the Anderson lowers poverty ponies. The reasoning was obvious. That little running horse logo combined with the budget price made the nickname inevitable. And honestly, it could have been an insult. In the firearms world, cheap usually means compromise, but Anderson leaned into it. Yeah, we're affordable. Yeah, we're the entry-level choice. So what? You could buy a few Anderson lowers with big dreams in mind and not be out a whole paycheck. The horse logo on the side and the budget price made the nickname stick, but reliability made it respectable. Think about that for a second. How many people built their first AR on an Anderson lower? How many people got into the firearms hobby because Anderson made it financially accessible? That's a pretty significant legacy, even if it doesn't sound sexy. Here's what a lot of people missed while they were making poverty pony jokes. Anderson was absolutely dominating their market segment. It wasn't like their products were made of paper mache. Their stuff was cheap and it worked. That's a winning combination regardless of the receiver's roll mark or the MSRP sticker. By 2017, Anderson Manufacturing ranked #1 in the ATF's miscellaneous firearms production category. That's the category that includes lower receivers, frames, and other serialized components. Not top 5, not honorable mention, #1, the biggest in America. And they didn't just hit that mark once and fall back. They held that position for at least 4 straight years, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020. consistently the largest producer of lower receivers in the US. By 2023, ATF records show Anderson manufactured over 308,000 lower receivers in a single year. More than PSA, more than Arrow, more than any of the heavy hitters everyone talks about. But here's something most people don't realize. Anderson started as an OEM parts supplier in late 2009, before they ever made complete rifles. They were making components for other companies to put their names on. When they shifted to building complete guns in 2010, it's unclear how much of that supplier business continued. Their former CEO once claimed almost 70% of brands in the AR space use Anderson parts. But that could have been referring to early OEM days, or it could mean they kept supplying competitors even when they were building their own brand. Either way, the numbers speak for themselves. By dominating the lower receiver production, Anderson wasn't just making poverty ponies. They were producing the foundation that a huge chunk of the industry was built on, whether the name was on it or not. July 1st, 2025. Out of nowhere, Anderson Manufacturing announces that they've sold their entire operation to Ruger. No warning signs, no industry rumors, no drama, just done. Their official statement was remarkably straightforward. Quote, "After careful consideration, we made the difficult decision to sell the company and close this chapter of our story. No corporate speak about exciting new opportunities or strategic partnerships. Just, we're done. Thanks for the memories." From Ruger's perspective, this wasn't about charity or preserving a legacy brand. This was business math. Anderson absolutely dominated the budget AR market, the exact segment Ruger had been attempting to truly crack for years. You may be relieved to know that the Anderson facility in Kentucky didn't just shut down. Same building, same workers, same machines, all humming along. The only thing that changed was who owned it and the logo that went on the products. Ruger made it clear they weren't continuing the Anderson brand. No more poverty ponies rolling off the line. But the manufacturing capacity, that's still running at full speed under new management. You have to imagine some big AR companies were popping champagne when this news dropped. Their biggest competitor in the budget market just vanished overnight. Anderson was producing over 300,000 lowers annually. That's not a small gap to fill. That's a massive chunk of market share suddenly up for grabs. And Ruger isn't even using the Anderson name to plug the wound. Anderson Manufacturing lasted 70 years by staying in their lane. They weren't trying to be glitzy or hog any limelight. They weren't chasing military contracts or competing in Gucci gun competitions on the internet. They just made reliable stuff at fair prices and kept their heads down. When it was time to go, they went quietly. No bankruptcy filing, no drama, just a family business that decided this chapter of their story was complete. Basically the firearm industry equivalent of saying an Irish goodbye. My first AR had an Anderson lower. I'm sure that the exact same sentence could be uttered by thousands of you watching right now. Given how recent their departure is, let's make sure we share those first build memories in the comments. The hiccups we ran into, those cool attachments you added, the satisfaction of completing your first AR, and the affordability, that was all thanks in large part to Anderson Manufacturing making the platform accessible. The poverty pony is dead, but honestly, for a family business that lasted 7 decades, dominated their market, and exited on their own terms with their dignity intact, that's about as good of an ending as you can write. This is Sam S. from AT3 Tactical. Rest easy, Anderson Manufacturing. Thanks for getting a generation of shooters into the AR platform without breaking their bank accounts.